for taking the time to join us today for the Plus Group webinar series. Today's topic is Assurity DI, who they are, where do they fit, why it matters to you. We're going to tell you how to protect your income. Our presenter today is Ken Smith, Director of Health Product Sales at Assurity Life. All lines will be muted during this webinar. If you would like to ask a question, please go to the question pane on your control panel and just type it in. We'll answer the questions at the end of the webinar. Also note that we are recording this webinar. It'll be sent to you along with the presentation, the audio, and the presentation in a follow-up email, and you should receive that in approximately 24 hours. So you should have that by tomorrow. Okay, everyone, thank you again, and now I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Ken Smith.
Great, thank you, Tracy. One of the things I want to start off with is I want to mention both myself personally and Assurity really appreciate our long-term relationship with the Plus Group. It is really the premier disability group to be dealing with. Second thing, or first thing to start out with, I want to congratulate everyone who's on the webinar for taking the time and showing the interest in improving more about Assurity, and I'm going to give you some ideas that you can take away and use. The slide says selling is 98% understanding human beings and 2% product knowledge. And that quote is from Joe Gandolfo. Joe Gandolfo was probably one of the greatest life insurance salespeople ever in the United States. Back in the 60s, he personally sold $1 billion worth of life insurance in 1 year. One of the problems is, in the industry, we have that turned around. We tend to focus 98% of our time on product knowledge and 2% on understanding human beings. And before we leave today, I'm going to give you some ideas related to that. But one thing I'm going to ask you to do as we go through the PowerPoint and this session this afternoon is I want you to take out a piece of paper and a pen, and as we're talking, I want you to think about prospects. You know, it's interesting. LIMRA did a study of consumers a few years back. Only 18% of consumers remember their agent or their advisor even briefly mentioning income protection. And, you know, it is so important when we're dealing with our clients just to ask the simple question, what's your most valuable asset? And typically, if we ask a prospect or client that, they're going to say their home. You know, they have never thought about the fact that their most valuable asset is their ability to earn an income. And if that stops because they're sick or hurt, everything else falls apart. This is an interesting chart, but we put this together to really demonstrate the opportunity and the potential with income protection. And if you look over toward the left at the slide, you're going to see, you know, physicians and dentists, and the number of percentage of market participation with the physicians and the dentists is up close to 80%, but the size of the market is small. But come on over to the right-hand side and look at professional, managers, and then middle income market. And you can see that when you get to the professional, the size of the market is large, but the number who own income protection or have their income protected is really very small. Now I'm going to ask you a question. What percent of disabilities do you think are related to accident? You know, when someone did a survey a couple of years back, 55% of advisors and agents thought most of the disabilities were due to accident. And it's really interesting when it comes down to it, because only 9% are due to accident. You look at what causes most disabilities: musculoskeletal, cancer, circulatory problems, but very few, only 9%, are related to accidents. And I'm not going to read this slide to you. You can see with Assurity Century Plus, the issue ages are 18 through 60. It's guaranteed renewable, level premium, level benefit to age 65. You can see the elimination periods. And then by occupation class, you can see the max issue limits. And you can see that both in the 3A and 4A, we will go up to $15,000 a month in benefit. And one of the things we will also do with those two occupations is we will write all benefit, base benefit, so that if they collect Social Security, there would be no reduction in the benefit at all. One of the things that really important in Assurity Century Plus plan is our definition of disability. We have what they call a true own-oc definition. And what that says, for the first 2 years after the elimination period, keeps you from doing the substantial and material duties of your own occupation. Let me give you an example of how this works. We actually had a claim. It was on a farmer, and because of a condition that that farmer had, he could no longer farm and be out in the sun. So he decided that he wanted to be a real estate agent. He started, got his exam, went through the exam, took the exam. We continued to pay the full benefit under his disability policy while he was starting out as a realtor. And it really gave him a great way to transition to his new occupation. And for certain classifications, this definition, the true own-oc definition, can be lengthened. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the breakdown of our business. Not surprisingly, 71% of our business is male. We are starting to see increased amounts of females beginning to purchase disability protection. 90% is non-tobacco, and only 6% of our business has a rating or is considered would be substandard. Here's the interesting thing with the occupational classes. You can see that essentially 89% of our business is 2A, 3A, and 4A. You know, it's interesting. People tend to still think of Assurity as a middle income carrier, but if you look at where our business is, 64% of our business is in the 3A and 4A occupation classes. We see a lot of business on occupations like dental hygienists, office administrators, government employees. And then we also see a lot of business from, I will say, self-employed contractors, electricians, plumbers, carpenters, those type of occupations. And you can see on the age side, you know, 37% of our business is between ages 30 and 39. Elimination period, almost 3/4 of our business has a 90-day is sold with a 90-day elimination period on it. And benefit period, you know, about 70% is either a 5-year or age 65 benefit. And one of the things I'll point out on the benefit period is typically if you're presenting a 5-year benefit period, take a look at the 10-year benefit. I really like it personally because you're extending the benefit out another 10 years or another 5 years, but the cost for the 10-year benefit is generally very minimal. And then on this slide, you can see all the riders that we offer. 84% of our plans have the supplemental disability offset, which is offset by Social Security, workers' comp, the residual, automatic increase option, and then you can see where the ONOC extension is at it and down through the slide. What I want to do is really focus on a couple of the riders that are available. I'll give you an example in a minute with the supplemental disability income rider. Basically, this rider is, the cost for it is lower than the base coverage, but benefits are reduced by the amount of Social Security that's paid. And I'll show you an example in a minute. We also have a retroactive injury benefit rider, and what this rider does is if the individual is disabled as a result of an accident, once they meet the elimination period, we'll go back to day one and pay benefits. So, for example, if I have a 60-day elimination period and I have this retroactive injury rider on my policy, and I'm disabled as a result of a car accident, once I've been disabled, that 61st day, Assurity will go back and send me a check for 2 months' worth of benefits. We've got the ONOC rider, which extends the benefits, like we talked about, where even though the person may be working in another occupation, as long as they're unable to perform material and substantial duties of their occupation when they purchase the plan, we will pay benefits. And then we've got the residual rider, and basically what that does is if someone can work essentially part-time and only earn part of their income, the residual rider will pay benefits. And the example I'll walk you through. We have a case here. They purchased $2,000 of monthly base benefit and $1,000 of the supplemental disability income rider. So they have a $3,000 monthly benefit. They're disabled. They're sick. They can't work. They apply for Social Security. It may take a year. What happens is if Social Security pays $500 a month, we will reduce that SDIR by $500 a month. So that once they started collecting Social Security, they would basically receive, in this example, $500 from Social Security and then $2,500 from Assurity. So they still would have a monthly benefit of $3,000. And then we're going to talk about a couple more of the riders. I want to talk for a minute about the critical illness rider. And essentially with the critical illness rider, they can buy up to 36 times their monthly benefit. And what the critical illness rider does is it pays the lump sum benefit that they purchase on diagnosis of one of the covered conditions. So for example, I have a $25,000 critical illness rider on my disability plan. I have a heart attack. Assurity is going to send me a check for $25,000. And what's unique about the way the benefits are structured on this rider with Assurity is you can see we have 3 categories. 1 is heart stroke, 2 is what I'll call the other, and then 3 is the cancer. And what we'll do is pay the full benefit up to the full benefit from each of the 3 categories. I'll give you an example. I have a heart attack, $25,000 benefit. Assurity is going to send me a check for $25,000. That category is over and done with. 2 years later, I have kidney failure. Assurity will send me another check for $25,000, and that category is over and done with. 3 years later, I have invasive cancer. I get another check for $25,000. the rider is over and done with at that point in time. But what I want to illustrate is if I buy a $25,000 benefit, I have the potential to receive up to 3 times that benefit. And here's my recommendation is if you think about the heart attacks, the cancers, especially today, a lot of times if you have a 90-day elimination period, your client will not be disabled long enough to collect on their disability plan, but they will have an impact on their income. So heart attacks a lot of times today might be back in work in 4 or 5 weeks. But when that person goes back to work full time, it may take another month or another 2 months for them to really get back at it full speed. Cancer is another one, especially for self-employed individuals. You know, in most cases, even if you add up the days that they end up as disabled as a result of the cancer, still may not be enough to meet their elimination period. So at least write a critical illness benefit to cover the elimination period. And then another rider I want to talk about for a minute is the return of premium rider. We've got a return of premium rider that if the issue ages are 18 through 44, it returns 100% of the premiums at the end of 25 years. And then with ages, if you add the rider ages 45 through 55, it returns 50% of the premiums at the end of 10 years. So just to show you, for example, say I was 40 years old, I add the return of premium rider to my disability plan, and then quit at the end of 10 years. If you go down the chart and see that at the end of 10 years, I would get back 42% of all the premiums that I had paid in. And again, you see over here, if I keep it to the end of the 25 years, I get 100% back. And on the right, you can see what happens if, say, I'm 50 years old, decide to quit after 5 years, I would get 9% of my premiums back. The Plus Group members do a great job of working with you to pre-screen cases. And, you know, most of the members have their own pre-screen. This is the Assurity pre-screen. And what I really, you know, if you're a life producer, I always recommend that understand that disability underwriting is different. You know, where if someone has your client has a bad back or a bad knee, that will not affect life underwriting, but it could affect underwriting for income protection. So one of the things I always recommend is that before you go out and actually do a presentation to a client for income protection, at least talk with the Plus Group member that you're working with and share with their illustration person or their underwriter a little bit about the background. Because I always say, hey, if there's going to be an exclusion, if I have a case where I may have an exclusion, it's a lot easier to sell that exclusion when I'm first presenting the plan than it is if it comes as a surprise after it's been issued. You can see our income, our DI exam charts. You know, ages 50, we'll go up to $3,000 a month without an exam. And then for self-employed individuals, we'll go up to $2,500 a month. And then for 25 more than $2,500, you know, we're going to ask for federal tax return and with schedules. And then one thing I want to mention is we do have a one occupation upgrade for self-employed individuals. And to meet that requirement is basically they have to have the business 3 years as an owner, have a net income of at least $30,000, and then own at least 10% of the business. And where this is really effective is with the 2A occupations. You know, we talked about the contractors, the plumbers, electricians. that with this one occupation upgrade, they can move up to a 3A occupation class and be eligible for the ONOC rider extension and also 10 age 65 or age 67 benefits. And then we have a MultiLife discount. And all we require for the MultiLife discount, which is 15%, is a list bill, basically the same employer, same group, and we'll take 15% off of the 3 policies. But it is a minimum of 3 years. You know, and with the discount, one of the things I really like, in many situations, a 10-year benefit with the 15% discount actually costs less than a 5-year benefit. And we also suggest, you know, to make it simple for if you're just starting out presenting disability, keep it simple with asking the question, if you became sick or hurt and could no longer earn an income, how would you pay your basic expenses? You know, the groceries, the auto, the mortgage, the electricity. Notice that you take the first letter, it comes out to gain. So here's what I'm going to tell her in these last few minutes. I'm going to say it's time to stop selling disability insurance. And I know you're thinking, oh man, Ken, what are you talking about? You were just telling us all the places to sell it. Here's my thing. If you think about it, no one really wants to buy insurance. What do our clients, what do our prospects want to do? They want to solve a problem. And one of the best ways to illustrate to your clients and prospects that they have a problem is just a simple question. If you're sick or hurt and can't work, how would you pay your bills? And what are most people going to say? Never thought about that. And then the second question is, does that concern you? And then, you know, if they say yes, you've got a prospect. All it takes is two questions. But with that first question, what are we doing? We're basically helping the prospect with that question to see that they've got a problem. That if they can't work due to sickness or injury, their income stops. How are they going to pay their bills? Ben Feldman was another great life insurance salesman, and you know, his quote is, paying the premium isn't the problem. Paying the premium is the solution. You know, the money's there, all you have to do is find it. And there's 2 things that really changed my perspective during my career about selling and about income protection. And the biggest thing for me was when I changed my attitude and said, I'm not really selling anything, I'm solving a problem for my prospect. And that's one of the most important things that we can walk away with, is realize that we solve problems. So my challenge to you for the next week is, who are you going to talk to about income protection? So with that, Tracy, any questions?
Okay, again, if you have any questions, please go to your control panel and type it in. We do have one, I see. The question is, if the SSDI is paid retroactively, will those payments be offset?
No, we do not do that.
Okay. Again, if you have any questions, please go to your control panel and type them in. Any other questions? See, you did a great job, Ken. You answered all the questions.
That was easy.
Well, if anyone thinks of any questions, feel free to reach out to your local Plus Group office, or you can contact me, Tracy, T-R-A-C-E-Y, at plusgroupus.com. And Ken, I think you did a fantastic job. We greatly appreciate it. And as I mentioned, you will get a copy of this presentation. It will be emailed to you as a link, and you should have it by tomorrow. So everyone should have that. If you have any issues with that, again, reach out to me and I'll take care of it. So again, thank you, Ken and Assurity, for your help today. And again, check out the Plus Group website at www.plusgroup.us.com in order to get info about your local Plus Group office or for more information about webinars, our future webinars. Ken, any famous last words?
No, I just want to thank you all and thank the Plus Group.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Everyone, thank you very much for your time today, and have a great day. Thank you. Thank you, Ken. Goodbye.